Athlete Fusion System. Now, a little bit about myself. I've been a coach for 15 years. I've gone down many rabbit holes and certifications, discovering athletic development, athletic performance, you name it. And my background is deeply involved with neuroscience. So, that being said, let's get into it so I don't waste your time. Now, what we're doing here, combining brain training with physical training, is that we're building capacity both mentally and physically. And what happens is if you lose mental capacity, it will affect you physically. And this is going to lead to inconsistent performance. And we don't want that. And what you'll find is, whether you're at the professional level already, you're at college, or you're just in high school and you're still developing, as the competition becomes greater, the thing that filters out athletes. So guys that don't make it, a lot of the time it is because of the mental side of things. Because as we grow and we're going through training throughout high school and college, assuming that an athlete is getting good quality strength training, good quality technique on whatever it is that they're training for in terms of their sport, the mental side starts to show its face more and more and more as the competition gets stiffer. And that being said, let's dive into 3 different types of athletes. All right. So 3 different types of athletes. We've got athlete A. Has a brain that processes information at a high rate with high amounts of mental endurance only until physical activity is involved. Okay. So this athlete is kind of in shape. They train now and again, or they have been doing some training, but it's probably the wrong type of training, or the training that they need specifically to enhance their physical attributes. And what happens, to keep it simple, is they're not able to keep up with the other athletes on the field, or they just perform at a level that's 20% lower than the athletes that are on the field. So to them, what happens is they have to process a lot harder in terms of thinking, because they're trying to match their physical output with the competition's physical output. So if they have a guy that's really fast, or they have a whole team that's very fast and powerful and they can move well on the field, but the athlete cannot match what they're doing because they lack the physical attributes, this can cause mental fatigue. So then you get an overall decrease in performance in the athlete. Because once mental fatigue has been reached, physical performance will go down. So the physical performance that they had prior to getting mentally tired gets even worse. And then usually that type of athlete doesn't last long in the sport, especially if they're trying to make it a career, get on like a college team, go to professional sports, whatever it might be. And this is usually the lesser of the cases, but sometimes it is the main problem. Some athletes don't have enough strength. Some athletes haven't learned how to deliver force into the ground so they can jump higher and sprint faster. Some athletes lack technique, and this will fatigue an athlete mentally and then lead to poor performance on the field, mistakes, you name it. So what you'll find with athlete A and athlete B is that both athletes lead to the same result. It leads to mental fatigue, because it's all one system. Your brain and your body work together. Brain tells the body what to do. It gets feedback from the body, and it makes decisions. And it's just a constant loop that happens over and over and over and over again. So if one gets tired, the other one's going to suffer, whether it's physical or mental. Athlete B has a brain that processes information at a low rate and has a low amount of mental endurance, but has great physical attributes. So this athlete is very strong, they're quick, they're powerful, maybe they've had some good training over time, and they can perform physically at a high level. But the problem is, if they have low mental capacity, maybe they can't pay attention for very long. They have working memory issues. They can't remember where people are on the field. They have visual problems. They can't track objects like people coming at them or balls flying through the air very well. And these people perform at a high level physically for a short amount of time, and then they gas out. They start experiencing mental fatigue. Sometimes they're good for a half or a quarter or a few quarters, depending on the day, but their mental capacity isn't big enough and large enough to last throughout a whole game, let alone an entire season. So if they're playing games every day, over and over and over again, you'll notice that these players, they get hot and cold. Sometimes they're really good, sometimes they're not good. And it's usually because they have hit their threshold in terms of mental fatigue. So if they have 3 or 4 bad games in a row, I would be looking at mental fatigue. And usually these guys need to rest to let their nervous system reboot. And that's not good because coaches and teams want to see consistent output. And if they can get that, then they have a winning team, especially a whole team that does that. And those are usually the teams that do well and win championships. If they have very good physical attributes and they also have low mental endurance, they make more mistakes. They get penalties. Their error rate is very high. They miss shots. Whatever the sport is, it doesn't matter. They're going to make more errors and make more, dumb decisions on the field that can cost them the game and even, cost them the spot on their team. So that's athlete B. Great physically, but not great mentally. And then we have athlete C. This is the athlete that we're trying to build. This is the athlete that we're trying to develop and turn into, a high-performing athlete on the field that doesn't make mistakes and doesn't have inconsistencies. So this athlete processes information at a high rate and has a large amount of mental endurance. So the grueling long season does not affect them really, and they have great physical attributes. So when you combine a high capacity mentally and a high capacity physically, then you get a consistent high performing athlete. And that's what it's all about. And what's great is if they have a high mental capacity, studies have been shown to increase physical capabilities. So there's studies out that show cyclists will finish a race 500 meters farther compared to athletes that don't do cognitive training with physical. There are studies out that show a dramatic increase in the amount of repetitions someone can do in terms of like simple stuff like push-ups and squats and things like that compared to people that don't use cognitive training with physical training. And there are about 50 studies coming out that use the specific technology that I use, which I'll get into here in a minute. But it's pretty remarkable once you get the brain operating at a high level and you build that capacity at a high level as well. So once again, just to reiterate, athlete C is going to avoid mental fatigue. Okay. If athlete C can avoid mental fatigue, they're going to perform physically more consistently at a higher level. So what do we do? How do we build the total athlete? And what is the process for that? The evaluation process. So we must see, balance, and move well to perform our sport at a high level. And if you come in to see me, if you're an athlete or you're a parent of an athlete, this is what we're going to go through. We're going to go over the injury history. Old injuries will inhibit performance. They can have pain problems, movement issues, you name it. We're going to assess the visual system. So how well do your eyeballs move? Very, very important for decision making. The eyes take in about 75 gigs worth of information per second. And how the eyes move determine a lot about how the athlete is going to react and make decisions on the field. They need to be able to see things coming at them. They need to be able to see things that they're not looking at. There's a lot of different visual skills that we're going to test. So the next one is the balance system. If an athlete cannot balance well, they're going to have poor coordination issues. You're not going to be able to react physically very well, and it can lead to injury risk. Obviously, poor mobility and flexibility is a decrease in muscular function. So they're not going to be able to apply force very well and be fast and jump higher and sprint faster and all of the amazing things that athletes can do on the field. And then basic strength. To be powerful, the athlete needs to be able to apply a certain amount of force, and we can enhance that through strength training. So that is the evaluation process. I'll gather information and then go over that information with you at the end of the evaluation. So, what does the cognitive evaluation look like? We have the cognitive baseline test using Soma Technologies. I'm certified through Soma to use their technology. I have a whole back office that I use to build programs just like I do exercise programs. I take in data, we take you through a quick cognitive test, and wherever you're not functioning very well, whether it be attention, decision making, working memory, concentration, focus, inhibition, we're going to build a program that is going to enhance those weaker parts of the brain. Okay. We're going to combine this with exercise. You might do it before you work out. I might have it set up for you to do it when we're training together, or you might do it post. It depends. Whatever the data tells me, that's how I make my decisions, and that's how I build cognitive programs. And it's very much like exercise programming. It's only a 5% or a 5% to 10% increase in intensity or duration per session. It's 2 to 3 per week, and it scales just like exercise does. We get a little bit stronger each week, and depending on what you're struggling with, there are modes that I can create within the system that make you focus harder or not make as many errors. There's a lot of different stuff we can do this with. We can do it with cardiovascular exercise on a bike. There's a lot of different ways you can use heart rate monitors with it. For instance, if we wanted to use a physical consequence mode, every time you make an error, the system will make you increase your heart rate for about 10 to 15 seconds. And it's a great way to do conditioning. It makes it fun, and the athlete builds cognitive capacity through neuroplasticity. And basically, every 4 weeks, we'll take a baseline test to see how you're doing, and I'll be monitoring it from week to week to see how you're doing, to make certain changes and make sure you're consistently getting better and improving. And basically, over a 3 to 5 month period, when we're working together, we're going to try to peak you. So when you go into your season or your sport, that everything is peaked out and you're ready to go. And then in season, we can monitor your fatigue. At the time of this video, we don't have concussion testing yet, but we will. So if you do get a lot of head trauma, we can do concussion testing as well, and then build another plan around that if we need to. That's something that's coming to the system soon. It's just going through all of the research and validity testing to make sure that it's legit. And that's what's great about this company. Everything is very heavily researched back. Okay. So moving on from the cognitive, let's talk about the 3 phases of physical training. Okay. So the first phase is general preparation. It's about 2 to 6 weeks, and you can think of this as the foundation of the house. And the cognitive is specific to the current capacity of the athlete. 2 to 3 sessions per week, like I mentioned. And then the physical, we're going to go into a deeper evaluation through an overhead squat assessment and muscle testing. So we're really going to break down, where you're weak, where you're strong, what your muscle imbalances are, and what we need to do in terms of corrective exercise. And then the plyometrics are usually high volume, low repetitions to build physical capacity. And then we go into general strength and hypertrophy, which you'll gain some muscle mass or not, depending on the sport. Low level speed and conditioning. Once again, we're just building you up and getting you ready for the next phases, building up that work capacity. And then the second phase is transmutation. So think of this as transferring to another thing. Okay. Okay. So then we're starting to get more specific. Cognitively, we're increasing difficulty of cognitive tasks, high endurance with a focus on the lowest performing mental skills. And we'll continue to do that throughout your program. But I might either change when I want you to do the actual drills, or I might start including it within the workout sessions to provide a different type of stimulus for your brain. Okay. Physical, moderate to high intensity. We're getting into more sport specific stuff, moderate to high repetitions. And think of it as going, like I said, intermediate to general plus specific movement. So we're trying to transfer closer to the sport specific type of movement after we built you up and we prepped you for that next phase, which is coming up. And then phase 3, it's the realization phase, or peaking. Okay, so we're peaking the athlete. This is about 2 to 4 weeks. Once again, all of this is depending on when the off season is, how long the off season is, and how long their in season is. And we have programming for that as well to make sure that they're maintaining their gains and they're going into the following off season maintaining their gains so they can continue to build that next off season and get even stronger and faster, and etc. Okay. Cognitive is still the same. We're still adapting, increasing intensities. Usually we're between 70 and 90% intensity on the cognitive training, which is very high and very difficult. The athlete is making a lot of decisions in either a short amount of time or a lot of decisions in a long amount of time. And it can be very taxing at this stage. Physical, high intensity. This is when I bring in the velocity-based training. And that is a box that I use, which is here. So I use Virtruve, and this little box will measure the velocity of movement. So I'll attach this to a bar, and we can collect all the data on how fast they're moving, and we can make very specific changes based on that information. Now, these are usually lower in repetitions for like squat, bench, deadlift, and we're looking for more high intent, high drive type of movements. So explosive box jumps, depth jumps, single leg bounding, very, very high intense, but low repetitions. So we get high quality movement, and that is similar to the sport. So we're getting very, very close to the sport speed of what the athlete is doing. And we're trying to peak them out in this phase. So when they go into their sport, they're strong, they're fast, and they're ready both cognitively and physically. And at that point, the athlete goes to in-season, where we try to maintain these parameters that we've created and developed over the off-season. And so they come in the next off-season and just keep riding what they've already developed, and they don't lose it, which is very important. So thank you very much for watching this, and I hope this answered a lot of your questions. You can schedule a free evaluation. You can email me or text me. It doesn't matter. And we can get you set up for a free eval and go from there. All right. Thanks for watching, and have a good day.